What if America's absolute most powerful weapon is being dismantled right now? And I'm not talking about the military, I'm talking about our economy. What if our greatest economic weapon was quietly being taken apart in foreign boardrooms, completely under the radar? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive tectonic shift happening right beneath our feet. Countries are quietly dumping the US dollar, and honestly, it might already be too late to stop the momentum. We're going to break down this accelerating reality of de-dollarization. We'll look at exactly why it's happening, who's pulling the strings, and most importantly, how this shift directly hits your savings, your grocery bills, and the very future of the United States as the world's reigning economic superpower.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1. How cash became king. The origin story of the global operating system.
So to really understand this, we got to go back to 1944. World War II wasn't even officially over, but 44 nations got together at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and made a decision that literally shaped the modern world. They agreed the US dollar would become the world's reserve currency. Back then, it was securely backed by gold. Fast forward to 1971, and President Nixon famously ends that gold convertibility. But here's the absolute genius move that locked in American financial supremacy. In the 1970s, the petrodollar was born. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger cut a historic deal where Saudi Arabia agreed to sell its oil exclusively in US dollars in exchange for American security guarantees.
So what exactly is the petrodollar? Basically, it's a global framework where worldwide oil sales are transacted exclusively in US dollars. And why was this the ultimate masterstroke? Well, suddenly every single country on Earth, whether you're Japan, Germany, or Brazil, you needed dollars if you wanted to keep your lights on and your cars running. Because everyone needed dollars to buy oil, there was this continuous, guaranteed worldwide demand for US currency. They didn't just hold physical cash, right? They held US debt in the form of treasury bonds. This meant America could run massive deficits and borrow incredibly cheaply for 80 years, basically acting as the mandatory operating system for all global trade.
But then, the system started to crack. Section 2. Weaponizing the US dollar. The 2022 turning point.
$300 billion. That is a staggering number. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Western institutions did something pretty extraordinary. They froze over $300 billion in Russian central bank's sovereign assets. This was money Russia thought was perfectly safe, just parked securely in Western banks. And let me tell you, when that switch was flipped, non-Western nations around the globe stopped and watched very, very closely.
Let's trace how this escalated through these 3 steps. Step 1. Unilaterally freeze massive sovereign assets. Step 2. Completely cut nations off from SWIFT, which is the critical messaging system for global banking. And Step 3. Watch as nervous global allies scrabble to build their own financial off-ramps. You see, the message sent to the rest of the world wasn't just, hey, we're punishing Russia. It was a terrifying warning. It showed that if America fundamentally disagrees with you, they can literally erase your nation's entire life savings overnight.
And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate fallout. Look at the US dollar's share of global central bank reserves. Back in 1998, that first bar, the dollar's share was incredibly high, totally uncontested. Now look over at 2023. It has dropped to a 25-year low. Make no mistake, guys, this is not just some temporary blip. This is a serious, deliberate trend line of powerful countries choosing to systematically move their reserves away from the US dollar.
So, let's pivot from the boardroom to the grocery store. Section 3. The impact on you. Why global shifts hit local wallets.
Listen, the dollar won't completely disappear tomorrow, but even a 10 to 15% drop in global demand for it is going to deeply hurt everyday Americans. Let's break down the 3 massive consequences here. First up, higher interest rates. Right now, massive global demand keeps our borrowing costs artificially low. Lower global demand for US bonds means those rates go up, making your mortgages, your car loans, and your credit cards significantly more expensive. Second, increased inflation. Think about it. If the world doesn't need as many dollars, those unwanted dollars stop going overseas. They stay right here at home, chasing the exact same amount of stuff. That creates intense inflationary pressure on all of us. And third, weaker geopolitical leverage. Sanctions only work if everyone is forced to rely on your system. If countries successfully build alternative off-ramps, America's ability to exert pressure without using military force is severely crippled.
Which brings us to this utterly terrifying reality currently staring us right in the face. $34 trillion. That's the current U.S. national debt, and we're paying over $1 trillion a year just in interest payments alone. Here is the critical, existential question we have to ask. If the dollar loses its reserve status and the foreign appetite to hold U.S. debt cools off, who exactly is going to step up and buy this massive $34 trillion burden, and at what price?
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is who's actually making these moves. Section 4. Countries dumping the dollar, the architects of the new system.
Let's rapidly cycle through the calculated moves happening on the board right now. First, China. They're aggressively expanding CIPS, which is their own alternative to SWIFT. They are playing a very deliberate long game to build a global yuan network. Next, Saudi Arabia, literally the original anchor of the petrodollar itself. They're actively exploring selling oil in Chinese yuan, which signals they might exit the petrodollar entirely. Then there's India. They're brilliantly hedging their bets, maintaining their U.S. ties but settling international trade in rupees, building out massive optionality. And finally, Russia. They were completely de-dollarized by force, and they're now trading in yuan, rupees, and even old-school barter arrangements. It's basically a real-world stress test proving that post-dollar trade actually works.
And of course, we absolutely cannot ignore the BRICS bloc. BRICS expanded significantly in 2024 to include major energy producers like the UAE and Iran, and they're actively discussing a shared reserve asset. Now sure, a fully unified BRICS currency is definitely years away, but their political will is growing rapidly. Every time they expand, it's a massive structural threat to American financial dominance.
So the crucial point is, where do we go from here? Section 5. The final verdict. Navigating the future.
Here's what you really need to take away from this explainer. First, avoid panic. Remember, this transition is a slow, multi-decade process. The dollar isn't going to just vanish tomorrow. It's still heavily dominant. Second, watch Washington closely. The real accelerants of this de-dollarization trend are the overuse of sanctions, weaponizing the financial system, and our own runaway national debt. America earned the world's trust with strict fiscal discipline, and we gotta see if we can get back to that restraint. And third, prepare locally. If the dollar systematically weakens over the coming decades, owning hard assets and making sure you have diversified international exposure might become absolutely vital to protecting your wealth.
I want to leave you with this powerful final thought. Dominant and invincible are two very different things. The US dollar is absolutely still the dominant force in the global economy, but it is no longer invincible. We are actively watching the quiet, slow transformation of the American economic empire.
So the ultimate question is, when the rest of the world stops needing our money, how will you protect your own? Make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below.